not working. We got it? I hear myself.
Okay, yeah. That should be it then.
I'm echoing back to myself.
You're echoing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the stream muted?
Oh, I should probably do that. Ooh, look at that.
That would be it.
That would make sense. Okay. So,
Do you hear music playing?
well, I muted it, so no.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's still playing. Is that okay?
Hey, there we go. Okay, hey Roger, can you hear me now?
Okay.
Should be good. Perfect. Alright, so yeah, we are good. The inaugural thing is started. So working the bugs out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. We should be good to go.
Okay.
I think so.
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. I feel like I'm the only person who loved this book, though. Like, looking through the Goodreads stuff, everyone was like, it was fine. Not a lot of plot. I'm like, yeah, but it was great. Okay.
It's like, see, I don't know. I don't find much plot at all.
It's okay. I'm ready to defend it. Like I said, I have a page of notes, and I listened to, like, an interview with him, so I have receipts. I'm here.
Okay. Well, let's try and come up with some kind of format here. So how about we start with what you enjoyed about it specifically?
Okay. I enjoyed the coming of age aspect to it. I really liked the writing. I liked the very different take on werewolves and really getting into the nitty gritty and all of the rules. And Roger says the theme song is still playing.
Yeah, I unmuted the wrong thing. All right, we're
Okay.
good. It should be gone now, Roger. Sorry. Thanks.
And the family dynamic with these characters. I mean, since it is such a character-focused story, you have time to really invest and fall in love with these characters. And with the, unnamed protagonist's, journey into this. So I can see it being a little more on the maybe character-focused. I know you don't like the word literary, but like that kind of side of things. So how about you? I know you didn't, or you're not sure how you feel about it, but what did you like?
It's interesting you use the word literary, and you know how triggering of a word that is for me.
That's why I was like, I know you don't like this word, but there we go.
Yeah. Okay, to be honest, I didn't realize until you just said it that our protagonist was unnamed.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't remember. I didn't know what his name was, but it didn't dawn on me that it was. He's never identified my name in the book. I like the detail. I like world building. Like, this is, I think, a good start to what could be, probably a good series of stories about werewolves and such. Now that it's established the rules, it established the folklore, what's true, what's not, and like the attention to detail. Like, there's at one point they say werewolves are, what are they? They're really paranoid about their bad breath, and urine is a pesticide, and like so weird, intricate details that are not just the common, oh, they turn into werewolves on the full moon, they're hurt by silver, stuff like this. What they added to it, I do appreciate. I like the idea that the wolf is almost a separate character than the person inside. Like, it's the wolf coming out and the personification of that. So, yeah, in terms of the world itself and the creatures that have been established in this book, I enjoyed it. But I'm still processing about the book itself. As a story or as a like an encyclopedia for this new type of werewolf.
I see.
Yeah.
So while you were reading it, because I know I kind of had this thought process while I was starting off with it, especially, like, did you ever think that maybe they weren't werewolves and maybe it was just something his family told him to kind of justify the lifestyle that they have?
It felt like that's what Jones was going for at the start anyway, before the grandfather died.
Yeah,
Like,
that was the moment for me. I'm like, okay, so they really are werewolves. This
yeah.
is the reality we're living in.
Yeah, like there was ambiguity at the first. I think that's like what the first third or so of the book. But I like the uncertainty at the start. It's the old man had kept no secret about the fact there are werewolves and talked really candidly about it. I enjoyed that part of it. Oops. Like, I don't know. It's I'm lost for words what to go into. Because, like, again, I like how candidly the old man spoke about it and how for the first half of the book, the kid was basically telling him the stories. Oh, I know all this stuff about werewolves because the stories my grandfather told me, even though he didn't really believe his grandfather to be a werewolf up to that point.
Yeah. It was like I was looking at a quote I wrote down here. It's like, and none of Grandpa's stories were ever lies. I know that now. They were just true in a different way.
Yeah, that was when he found out who his father was, I believe. That was like near the end, I think. But yeah, that's. I actually was surprised that the grandfather died so early. I felt like that was going to be more into it, but then I guess it's more about the protagonist and his aunt and uncle. Yeah. What did you not enjoy as much about it? Because I know you adored it, so this part should be shorter for you.
I really didn't like that turn it took in the last chunk of the book where we have Darren being kidnapped for his urine by this like landscaping company, or no, it was a pest company, right?
It was an
So it wasn't
exterminator.
Exterminators, yeah. So that whole thing, I think at that point I was happy that he found love, but just that whole thing where he's kidnapped, I thought was a little ridiculous and unnecessary and really didn't fit in with the tone of the rest of the book. I thought even when they bailed him out of jail with the bear, that fit more than this did.
Okay. So you really are a character-driven reader, aren't you?
I think so, but then when a book is, I don't know, I feel like there's some books that are lauded as like character-driven, but if they don't have anything that keeps me going, I don't know.
Well,
I'm not like a hard and fast, like, if you say it's a character book, I'm going to like it.
Well, it depends on how well you do the characters. The characters still have to be enticing for you to go along with that kind of story.
Yeah.
But like, because those two parts in particular, the bear, and the kidnapping, that was like the only real part of this book where he like tried to infuse some kind of plot. Like, the problem is, again, it's like the kidnapping is like 2 chapters at the end of the book out of nowhere. The bear just randomly shows up. Oh, Darren's arrested. Oh, there was this contest where if you fight a bear, you get money. So there's a bear we could use. Like, it's just so out of nowhere. We were talking before we started the show, and you said how do you think Stephen Graham Jones is more of a short story kind of author? And yeah, like I mentioned then, it really shows in this because it's almost like each individual chapter has its own beginning, middle, and end. In a way, a short story writer would do it. So it's like, I don't think they were short stories in and of themselves, but it had a real chapter to chapter feel for the writing, more so than a long story told over time.
Mm-hmm. How do you usually feel about like mosaic stories, like novels that are made of short stories?
I'm okay with. I can honestly say I haven't read one in for the last one I read was God Dead Mech, maybe Jake Bible one, where it was all drabbles. A drabble is a 100-word piece of fiction, no more, no less, and he wrote a bunch of drabbles together and made a novel out of it, and I read that, and I like that. With Mongrels, I feel like it was done. You could see that's his style of writing. That's where his comfort zone. His comfort zone is in shorter fiction, or that's what it seems like anyway. And I think with Mongrels, it's the short story aspect of it. I don't think was strong enough to be short stories, but also the greater whole of it, I don't think really came together. It was almost like he didn't go far enough one way or the other, if that makes sense. I think that's where I fall in this book now.
Okay.
I see what he was trying to do. Or see, not what he's trying to do, but like, I could see where his strengths are. And I think this kind of falls in like a little mid-range area of that. Roger, how did you feel about it, buddy? Because I see you and you're still lurking. Feel free to chime in, man. Offer 2 cents and ever.
I don't know. It didn't. I think the disjointed nature of it really didn't bother me, which I don't know if that's like necessarily what bothered you or like that didn't resonate as well with you. I don't know. I liked it.
It's like it was either not disjointed enough or not cohesive enough. It was somewhere in between.
So what did you, because I think for the cohesion, that's why he had the shorter chapters in there where they are in third person and where the unnamed protagonist is referred to as like, the reporter, the mechanic,
the vampire.
Which
totally threw me
criminal.
off. Oh my god, the second chapter, the vampire did this. Like, wait a minute, hold on.
Like,
there's vampires in this now?
Yeah.
And then when they mentioned Red, I was like, wait a minute, so Libby's ex-boyfriend is now with a vampire family? What the oh my god. That was so confusing at first.
Oh man. There was one quote I liked about Libby. I'm digging through my thing, but I think in the beginning when we were still not sure if it was a literal werewolf story, and I think it's the first chapter, so it's like the protagonist looking back on his life and saying that these are the reasons that Libby fell for Red, and he says like everything makes sense if you look at it long enough. Mm-hmm. So I thought that made an interesting case for like the idea of like putting a narrative to things in your life, which is like what I thought the grandfather was doing with these werewolf stories.
Okay.
I had a few things like highlighted in here. I also have a post-it note that says, "Why does Darren drink strawberry wine coolers?" And then I was gonna look it up, and I'm like, is that like a werewolf thing? Do werewolves like notoriously eat strawberries? Do they have like some kind of vitamin that werewolves need? Is there a link between just dogs and strawberries? And I never really looked into that, but I was like, what a funny quirk.
I may be wrong, but I don't think there's any specific lore that ties strawberries to werewolves. But I think, looking at it as a literary device, I think that was simply put in there specifically for those last 2 chapters. Because it's the fact that the Rayford said, oh, he was drinking Corona or something like that, that made the protagonist know that something was wrong.
Yeah. Well, there's also that scene where he goes, I forget what he was doing, but it's at that gas station, and the guy checking him out says like, "Are you sure you don't want any strawberry wine coolers with that?"
I thought it was a grocery store or something.
Was it a grocery store? There it was, yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what it did. Now we got to move.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah. I did like. I found well. I'm not sure if it was funny, but I liked how in near the end with was it Grace Ellen, and because she had a husband who was a werewolf who was more modern, I guess, than their grandfather was, and like to talk about how this relationship's not going to work out. I mean, you have kids, you're going to die. She's like, what? No, like maybe 500 years ago, like everything they knew, everything the protagonist was being taught about being a werewolf up to this point was so antiquated, and it was like so so much more going on. Like I don't know. I found that cool. That like I'm not sure if it's interesting or lazy actually. Now that I'm really thinking about it, because it's like, oh, I want to have Darren have a love interest at the end. So here, by the way, everything you knew about werewolves up to this point has kind of been wrong. And
I liked that because Darren and Libby, like what they knew about being a werewolf was just what their father had told them. And so having this, very limited flow of information
yeah,
played a big part in that. Um, and also what I thought was interesting is like, I think when I think of werewolves, you think of like them being in packs, but in this story, your pack really just being whatever your blood immediate family unit is.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if like there's a statement trying to be made there about the password of information, and like I don't know. I feel like there's something else trying to be said about that fact that they went through their whole basically existence based on their grandfather, what he said, and he probably got it from his parents and so on and so forth, passed on through generations. But the world itself outside of that little bubble kind of advanced to the point where they can have kids and such. Yeah, and like the whole thing, if you're born into the wolf, you can control it. If you're bitten, you can't necessarily. I find at the end now, knowing that them the mother having children, being fatal, stuff like this being incorrect, it kind of makes you wonder, how much else is wrong.
That's true.
But what they are.
Hey, Rachel's here.
What's up, Rachel?
Yeah, that is true. I didn't think about that, how that kind of discredits like everything up to that point. I would say maybe except the pantyhose thing. I wouldn't want to risk that.
Oh my god. Oh man.
This, like, the beginning of the story really reminded me of Big Fish. Have you seen that?
The movie?
Yeah, like the Tim Burton movie.
Ewan McGregor?
Yeah.
I seen it when it was new. I can't remember much about it. That's when the dude's an old man. He used to tell a lot of tall tales.
Yeah.
And it shows him as a younger guy. Going through. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like he's at the end of his life, and his son was like frustrated because his dad was never like straight up with him and always kind of relayed information about their family history via these like tall tales and fables.
Yeah.
So it definitely reminded me of that, like the first
that.
part of it. Yeah. And then another thing I kept thinking about was Shameless, just because of their family dynamic, and that it's like they have their own system of ethics, and like they will do what they need to do to get by and survive. And like they are really only like their loyalty is to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely a Gallagher thing. For sure. Yeah, like I'm not even I have so many thoughts because, full disclosure, like I finished reading this book today, so I'm still processing a lot of this stuff.
I feel like that's going to happen to me next month because it's a big book.
Walker's is a big book?
To me, like what was this? This was like 300 pages. Walker's is like, I think like 5. Or like closer to, it's like in the high 400s.
I wasn't unaware of this. I'm a slow reader. How could you let me pick this book? 440. Okay, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. Okay, I get to hear that.
Oh yeah, Rachel wants to know if you liked it. He's still thinking about.
I mentioned earlier that I'd like the ground rules. I like the world building. I like the familiar yet unique take on werewolves, and the diving into like aspects of their culture that people don't normally dive into in these kind of books or movies. Even stuff like talking about the anatomy and how the certain claws of the that dogs have, they only have from when they were wolves, and how they're useless now, and they're simply used just in being born, kind of thing. Like, they go into a lot of really cool details in that sense. But again, in terms of a all-encompassing story, a full-length novel, I'm still not sure where I fall on this. I would say, and I'm not intending to get into a huge debate on what horror is and what horror is not, I probably wouldn't classify this as a horror novel. I think this is a dramatic, maybe, coming of age, we can probably say for sure. But like, this novel has werewolves in it, therefore it's in a horror thing. But nothing about this novel I found would put it into a horror category if I was looking at it based on its narrative. Like, these aren't, they're monsters, but not quite monsters in the traditional sense of the word. Like, they have established rules, how they work. They have norms. They have like, this is just a story of the protagonist's life. From, I think, if he starts at like 8 and he ends at like 16 or so, give or take.
Yeah.
So it's just like his family. It's an unorthodox family. Family that can turn into giant canines that can dismember people on a whim. But I didn't get a horror aspect from this. In the same sense, like, people would call Twilight horror because it has vampires and werewolves. This one has werewolves.
I don't know who these people are.
I know people that would call Twilight horror. It's very literary horror, which is...
Oh, she said your word.
Well, she's right. This is a more of a literary story than a horror/genre story.
Yeah, but this is a story. Yeah, this is definitely a book I would give to someone that's coming from reading only literary fiction and maybe would look down on horror. This is a book I would give them.
Totally, yeah. This is a somewhat literary novel that uses werewolves, not a horror novel with literary aspects. That's how I would probably sum it up.
I haven't read The Devil in Silver, but good to know.
Devil in Silver? I've not.
I think that's Victor LaValle. I think it's Victor LaValle, like one of his earlier.
Victor
like
LaValle?
Takes place in a mental asylum, I think.
It is Victor LaValle. Okay.
Yeah.
Psychological fiction, occult fiction. Okay. Take that note for later. I agree with both of you. I don't know if you can agree with both of us, Rachel. Me and her are kind of having two different thoughts on this book. Actually, no, I think we have the same thoughts. I just think you liked it and I not so much for the same reasons.
Yeah.
I think we have the same opinion on what the book is.
Basically, is where we're at. But I'm like, it was great.
I was like, yeah, it was okay. I'm not going to lie. If it wasn't for the book club, if we weren't doing a live show talking about it now with the chat and such, I don't know if I would have finished this.
Wow, that hurts my heart a little bit.
I probably would have. It was not that long. And I had the audiobook, and I may have, but like, it's one that I would have had to make myself finish. Like, now, hold on. Thinking back, am I wrong in remembering that the chapters were all song titles? I feel like they were, because I remember there was Layla, there was Bark at the Moon. But that might be just a coincidence.
I was looking at a list of things, and it was just his bibliography. I'm like, I don't think any of these are songs. See, the moon is a harsh mistress.
Wolf like me. Okay. No, maybe not. Billy's a kid. Werewolves on. It could have just been coincidence that there was a couple that had a.
American Ninja.
Yeah, never mind.
Unless they're like really obscure.
No, I think it's just those two, but they stuck in my mind because when I saw Bark of the Moon, I was like, hey, wasn't there a chapter just called Layla? Which, okay, that was weird in and of itself. When he finds, what was her name? Brittany?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brittany. And that's a whole chapter of a time in his life when he's like getting close to this girl. You know, it's the only girl he'll ever want, and all this stuff. And then randomly, the grandfather of her becomes a werewolf that tries to kill. I got a little, what is going on here? I think chapter 9 is where I kind of was like, okay, this is just a series of different events happening that barely tie together.
But a life is made of different series of events.
Don't get philosophical.
And aren't we all interconnected with
I don't know, like the whole killing of her grandfather I found fairly random. Like, here for sport, I didn't actually get a chance to read it. Werewolf narratives have never been my thing.
other Jones works that I read. Let's see, I've read this. I've read some of his short stories, and I've read Mapping the Interior.
Okay, how does this rank?
It's tough because I love them both. Mapping the Interior is much more of a straightforward narrative, but it still is really confusing. It's got like, well, I know Roger just read Fever Dream. I just saw him put it up, but it's got kind of like that quality to it. I don't know. I think I like this one a little more than Mapping the Interior. It's really tough. They're both like coming of age stories. Actually, I don't know if Mapping the, you know what? It's hard. I love them both. I DNF'd the last Final Girl. I might pick it up at another time, but I just wasn't in the mood when I read it. That's kind of like a Scream slasher, like meta commentary slasher type story.
All right, Roger, what is it about werewolf narratives do you think that doesn't really click with you? And the reason why I asked is because I actually didn't find this has much of a like traditional what you would find in other werewolf fiction. Because like this was more about the family dynamic and the protagonist, you know, learning about himself, not necessarily as a wolf, just learning about himself as he goes through all these various events that happens. A lot of the werewolf stuff is just window dressing for what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also not a huge fan of creature horror, but I really enjoyed this. And I think people that like creature horror probably won't like this.
I like creature horror. Zombie and ghost stories seem more plausible, I guess.
I don't know,
Okay.
That's how my husband is. Like I told you, like he can deal with zombie stories because like by nature they have to have world building.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
And then ghost stories, like if you, I don't know, believe in like some kind of an afterlife, makes it a little more plausible, I guess. Yeah. Like energy and spirits. Like there's always some kind of an explanation when you read a ghost story. It's like, you know, there's like energy and
it's true.
A haunted spirit that has unfinished business. Like,
yeah, and werewolves, skinwalkers, it's all tied into like usually, you know, native lore and folklore, and a lot of it's probably just, you know, superstition and myth.
Yeah. Stephen Graham Jones said a lot of this was autobiographical.
Really?
Like he said, like, well, not the where. I don't think he.
Skinwalker Ranch. Okay.
I don't know what that is.
No?
No.
What do you mean? Oh, you mean you like never heard it?
Yeah.
It's a real place. It's shit, where is it? It's kind of like Area 51, but for I believe werewolves.
Okay.
Let's see. Sherman Ranch is Utah. That's where it is.
Rachel.
Yeah, so it's basically a place known for paranormal activity, more or less.
The film franchise.
Ah, God, no. Actual paranormal activity. And yeah, Skinwalker. We know what Skinwalker is. So. Rachel, I must Google that. Okay, you Google it, Rachel. Like I said, I'm not overly. I don't know a lot of the details, but it's a name I've heard of.
Yeah. I really haven't read a ton of werewolf stories, so I don't have like a whole lot to compare it to. And I feel like the stories that I have read that have werewolves, they're side characters, and it's never really their story.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, you have your teen wolf if you want to get into it.
If you ask my sister, for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. Werewolves in werewolf horror fiction, it's hard to tell the story from the werewolf perspective because a lot of that kind of derives itself on the monster being a monster, being not relatable, being an entity, that's threatening that you don't quite understand. If you're doing it from the perspective of the werewolf, it's a lot harder to pull that off in terms of horror.
Yeah.
With
Well, I think what I liked about this, though, in comparison, like, there's a ton of vampire fiction out there. And I feel like in a lot of vampire fiction, they are vampires that have been around for hundreds of years. And so because of that, money is never a problem because they've had centuries to accrue wealth.
Yeah.
And so, like, basic needs aren't ever really a driving factor like they were in this story.
Yeah. In this one, okay, yes. I mean, there are werewolf lore, there are werewolf stories where the wolves themselves also live for hundreds of years.
I think like the last werewolf he is, right? And he's like super rich.
I was actually going to mention that. Yes. Olive was on my case for a long time to read that book, and that was actually another one that I really enjoyed. Actually, I really, really enjoyed that one, and that was kind of literary, sort of, in a sense. But yeah, like werewolves are more, or sorry, wolves themselves, I guess, they're more instinctual, just animal instinct. Whereas vampires are usually more, I don't know, cerebral, more cunning. Like they're two opposite sides of the same coin.
Like they're all id.
Basically, yeah.
They're all just like impulse and
yeah,
like immediate. Yeah,
wolves just go on their base animal instinct. Not
Yeah.
dumb, because they're probably some of they're really clever hunters and really crafty and such, but all driven by pure instinct. Whereas vampires are more lust and more desire than anything.
Bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, Roger not scared by werewolves because I grew up with Harry Potter and Twilight in the zeitgeist. Which, yeah, that's a very valid point, sir. Like,
Were you Team Edward or Team Jacob, though?
I really hope you're asking Roger.
Just anyone.
I refuse to acknowledge that statement. More so than I already have. You're watching new werewolf movies. I have watched a plethora of werewolf movies.
I watched probably less than you. But I've seen An American Werewolf in London and was the Michael J. Fox one Teen Wolf?
That was the original Teen Wolf, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I watched that one.
I watched An American
Rachel,
Werewolf.
I think I was Team Jacob, actually.
Well, Edward
okay, first of all, I want you to stop judging and realize that I was a teenage girl in the 2000s that already read YA romance, so I was the target audience.
Edward was emotionally abusive to
Yeah.
that woman. Anyway, I'm not getting involved in that conversation. No.
I'm just defending why I read 3 of them. It's fine.
Teen Wolf 2 with Jason Bateman.
Is that a real thing?
Teen Wolf 2. There was a Teen Wolf 2. Was Jason Bateman in it? I don't know if
Actually,
he's trolling or not.
I think that's right.
I don't know if he's trolling.
I want this to be made now, but with Jason Bateman playing a teenage version of a werewolf.
Oh my god.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, Teen Wolf 2, Teen Wolf TOO. Okay. That one I didn't see. But yeah, I've seen American Werewolf in London. That's just a classic. That's like the Dracula of werewolf movies. I've seen an American Werewolf in Paris, which was late 90s, much different kind of tone, but I still liked it. Silver Bullet, The Howling.
Is that the Stephen King one? Silver Bullet?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Ginger Snaps franchise. Oh my god, that is amazing.
Oh, I was going to watch it before doing this chat. It's on Amazon Prime.
Oh,
I was like, I need to watch that so I can talk about it.
I'm not a fan of the prequel, where they're like in
I don't think they
frontier times, but yeah, it's that's a good series.
I was only planning on watching the one.
Yeah, just watch the one. That's
I wasn't aware it was a franchise. So.
Oh yeah, there's 3, I think, 3 or 4.
Okay.
But yeah, Ginger Snaps is a really good underrated werewolf movie. And like, okay, in terms of the creature itself, and something that Mongrels highlights is like I keep going back to, is that everyone has their own like different kind of way of doing the creature. Vampires, they have differences between franchises and such, but generally they kind of do stick to the same beats. Werewolves, I find they have a couple of similarities, but a lot of them do, like, I think they end up being more unique to their own series. Like, I think it was American Werewolf in London, I'm pretty sure, where they could, like, see ghosts of the people that they've killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that, I found, that was ingenious. Like, and you don't see that, I'm thinking, and yet, well, you see it in American Werewolf in Paris, because I think that's, like, an unofficial sequel, but, yeah, it's a, stuff like that I find makes werewolf literature and werewolf media, I guess, less likely to burn out on than vampires. Because if you see one vampire, you kind of seen most of them. Werewolves have more distinct portrayals, I would say. Dog Soldiers I have not seen. I'm guessing Steph has not seen it as well.
No, I haven't. I was just like thinking like, oh, vampires are not the same.
Okay, well, again, give me some innovation of the vampire that you can point to, besides glowing or sparkling in the sunlight.
It's sparkling.
God
Okay.
No, those are not vampires. Those are emo kids that just, I don't know. But yeah, Dog Soldiers is one I know of, and I wanted to see. I just never got around to it. Like, as much as I respect werewolves, they're not usually high up on my priorities of things to consume. Already,
I would say usually creature horror in general is up there with like not my favorite.
What was it?
I said creature horror in general is usually up there with like not my favorite.
Yeah, creature horror has the problem of a lot of it's kind of like horror movies in general. A lot of people get into it thinking it's so simple, and you end up with a really derivative kind of work. Like, oh, it's easy to do a horror movie. Let's get a shaky cam and let's just yell and not show things. With creature horror, it's like, how cool can we make this monster look? If we can't make it look cool at all, don't put them on the screen for very long, and all you do is make them jump out every now and then, and it's good. So, like, I think creature horror gets saturated with just people writing it without quite understanding what makes the classics of it really timeless. I Was a Teenage Werewolf is, God, that's That's an old one. I think that was black and white.
Well, Stephen King is kind of old.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know. And On Writing is a really good book. If you want to, even if you don't want to be a writer, that's a good book to read anyway. It's cool, like mostly a bio of Stephen King.
Yeah.
Michael Landon was in that, wasn't he? I gotta see that. Hold on. Yeah, Michael Landon playing a teenage werewolf. That's what that was. Michael Landon, for those that don't know, was an angel in Highway to Heaven, I think, and the father in Little House on the Prairie. Sorry.
Not okay.
Oh shit, Wolfman, like the
yeah, I was
original
gonna say
Wolfman.
that.
I haven't even thought about that. So that's just a given, though. But yeah, I don't know. Like I like what he did with Mongrels, in the sense of what he did with the werewolves. I think it could make some really great stories having these characters. If you put them in a narrative with a plot, it might. See, this is annoying me because I'm a character person. I'd give me good characters and shitty plot over a shitty plot and good character over shitty characters and good plot. Yeah. Wow. So, like I said, a really, really, really good character.
But you just
can make up
don't
for
think
a
they
weak
had
plot.
enough to do?
Yeah, I don't think there was a weak plot in this. I don't think there was any plot in this.
No.
I think he made the characters.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, he made the characters, and then each individual chapter is some random thing that happened to them. But once it's done, it's in the past and it's gone.
Yeah, like even if you would have made it that they were running from Red or something, like Red was on their tail.
Oh man, honestly, even if, and this would have been kind of annoying because it would be so, of course, why not? If Grace Ellen's husband, Trigo, would have actually have been Red.
Ooh, very soapy. I like it.
That would have been at least something because, like, Red, this, like, physically abusive wolf dude. Yeah, you haven't seen him so long. They're constantly running from him, but he actually sorted his life out and he had a new wife and such and taught her all these things. Like, that would have at least tied back into the opening and would have at least made it feel more like a novel instead of a broken up journal of someone's life. But like with the chapter with Brittany, with the chapters of the kidnapping was near the end, but still there's that. With Libby getting shot because the cops were about to take her in. All this stuff happens and then it's done and then it has no lasting effect on the rest of the story. And that's where it lost me, I think.
I see. Did you like the chapter with the scientist?
The scientist?
Like the lady that came in, she was a biologist. She was a biologist, right?
Secret admirer.
Yes. And Darren is eating like dollar store. Is it like confetti or like streamers or something?
Yeah, see, that was interesting. I'm not gonna lie. That section is kind of a haze for me. Like, I was kind of multitasking when I was listening to that. But yeah, I remember that because she goes to school with and she's like a guest speaker with the protagonist, and she's like talking about werewolves without actually talking about werewolves.
Yeah, because like she has that thing where they're all holding. She's like a scat specialist, and they're all holding scat, and she's like, the thing with this one is that it is both wolf and human.
Yeah, that's the one where she's been like tracking Darren and them now for a while or something because they just follow the roadkill, and when there's less roadkill, then she looks for scat. Okay, yeah, that was entertaining, and a lot of the individual stuff in this was entertaining, but the fact that Chapter 6 had nothing to do with Chapter 8, with nothing to do with Chapter 11, with 14. Like, it didn't tie together like I feel a full-length novel should. Nor was it, like, 17 short stories with a common thread either, because I don't think they would have held up by themselves as short stories either.
I'm trying to like think. I'm like, yeah. I was trying to think if they might have held up. Definitely not the shorter third person ones.
Yeah. Oh God, no. Those are just transitional chapters anyway.
Yeah. They're just like I think Stephen Graham Jones called them padding, like padding in between chapters.
Yeah.
And he's a creative writing teacher, and he's like, if any of my students like brought this up as an idea, I'd say no, don't do it. Like, it's not good.
That is.
Like to do the first and third person switch in between chapters.
I'm down with that.
I usually am too.
In terms of a story, but not when you're using the same characters. Like, not to continually talk about this author, but like Jake Bible, in the third Zeburbia story, he is the first time, like up to this point, it's only been first person presence following Jay Stanford. That was our main character. In the third book, there's chapters that are not narrated by Jace, and those chapters are in third person. So like you'll read a chapter by Jace, first person. Then it'll be a third person chapter, but it'll be from another character where Jace isn't around. So I'm down with switching between first and third. I'm even down switching between past and present. But in this, it was like not changing anything. It was literally changing the tense, the POV, for the sake of changing the POV, because it was just continuing with what he was talking about. But just, yeah, now that you say padding, that's exactly what it was. It was there to lengthen the book. Because there really wasn't anything in those chapters that couldn't have just been included into a previous or a following chapter in first person.
No. I think we're meant to think that like the protagonist is writing those chapters.
Yeah, I guess.
And so it's like the different ways he views himself at those ages, like with that little device, like the criminal, the vampire, the mechanic.
That vampire still screwed me up so much.
It was Halloween.
Oh, it took me so long to figure out what was going on there. But yeah. Any final thoughts there, ma'am?
I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was good. It works for me like as a werewolf, like as a new addition to like werewolf canon and lore, like with all of the rules. For me, it works as a piece of like coming of age fiction, just like in general. There's like I don't know if I would necessarily say like Southern Gothic. There's like a lot of rundown stuff, but I don't know if any of it is like necessarily like religious-y. But I don't know. I really liked it. I really liked these characters. I thought it was a very interesting and unique lens, and it was very well written. So yeah, like I really liked it. It really worked for me. Those are all the things that I need like a good, well written story.
Let's see. That's I guess that's a testament to our
cohesion. To me is like not that important. I read a lot of like mosaic stories and short story collections. Like I guess I don't need a plot necessarily.
You cannot have a plot and still have the previous chapters like affect and tie into following chapters. That's not really a plot thing, more so.
One could.
See, this is a testament to our differing in taste, because I cannot disagree with any of the technical things you said just then. It was well written. It was a good addition to werewolf lore. Like all those things you just said is true. It's just we're walking away from this book with two different opinions of enjoyment.
And that's what makes us. That's what makes us good co-hosts, though, is that we don't agree. This would be boring if you were like, yeah, that's cool. Yep. Same.
For me, I will admit that, like I said, even though I'm very underwhelmed by it, I didn't dislike it. I've come to the conclusion I did not dislike it. I didn't overly like it, but I didn't dislike it. It's like I said, I very underwhelmed in from my own personal take. But I will give the story props, and I will say that this is actually a really good novel to recommend somebody, whether coming from literary or genre or whatever, but coming from non-horror to horror. This is a decent transitional story that you can give somebody who doesn't read a lot of horror to get them warmed up to the idea of werewolf, because there's still enough violence and enough uncomfortable things in this book that can kind of warm you up to the idea of horror, and then get into something a little more graphic later or something more tense later. But it's a good introduction to the genre. I'll give it that.
Definitely.
Like, yeah.
Like I said, I would give this to a genre snob.
What?
I said I would give this to like a genre snob.
Oh, yeah. Someone that says this kind of stuff can't have literary merit. This is a good
like
one
there's
to
literary
show.
merit and then there's horror. I'd be like, yeah, read this.
Exactly.
Well, that's like Stephen Graham Jones in general. He's a great writer. Like all the short stories I've read by him are amazing.
He's got me curious enough to read some short stories by him. At least there's that. Like, I'm not off of the Stephen Graham Jones train yet. And for what it is, it's I think that's the best way to put it down. Okay, actually, for what it is, it's good. It's really good. Mm-hmm. I just wasn't looking for that kind of thing going into it.
Yeah, and I think that was a lot of people's. If you look at the Goodreads comments, that was what a lot of people thought.
Yeah, I seem to be in the majority of that, I think.
It's fine. So it's your book next.
Yes.
Which I think is going to be more classically plot driven. So I think people won't be stuck with a plotless book. And then you and I were talking for next pick, because we're switching off my pick, your pick, and then Patreon vote.
Yep, it's a Patreon pick next time.
Yeah, and then all the nominees are going to be on the Bram Stoker list.
Yep.
Okay.
Me and Steph are going to narrow down a number of how many's on the short list or the nominees for novel.
For novel 5.
Oh, okay. Well, then
I've read like 3 of them.
Okay, so maybe
there's novel, there's first novel, there's YA.
Huh.
Like, so that's like 15. There's also like fiction collection, which I might choose like one from that I think might be interesting to talk about.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll come up with our own short list of the Bram Stoker nominees, and then put that up for a vote, and then the patrons can vote on which one we're going to read for April. Mm-hmm. I haven't looked at them yet, so I can't make more commentary than that, but that is what the plan is, because I am actually jacked to do that.
Sounds good.
All right.
How about you, Rachel? I don't know if you're cooking or anything. Did you have any final thoughts on it?
Or any other questions, concerns, comments?
Or Roger, or whoever.
We'll also be scheduling the next live show further in advance than this one was. Yeah,
so we can do it later, because I know Roger's on the West Coast, but I know we kind of alienated a lot of West Coast people because it gets before 5, so they might still be working.
Yeah. Scheduling this month has been kind of a pain, not just for this, but for a bunch of things for me, so yes, my apologies for that. And yeah, I don't think there's any final thoughts coming in, Steph, so...
All right.
All right, guys, thanks for hanging out.
All right, thank you.
See you next month.